Discovery uses 20 seconds to LOS speed ready.
Not yet. Nice to be in orbit.
Host Adam Hartel, and we were just watching the Gnomon 2020 student reel. No, it was not a compilation of up-and-coming, film trailers. This was not content from a game studio that you're not aware of yet. This is actually student work from Gnomon, from students in our programs here. So I'll be talking a little bit later in the stream about how we're training artists to do that kind of stuff. But first off, we get to have an amazing guest with us today. Ashley Stegon is with us, and she is going to be sharing quite a few things with us, talking about her art journey, talking about her time at Gnomon and the amazing projects she's moved on to. For those of you just joining us that might not be familiar with what Gnomon is, we're essentially we are a 3D art school in Hollywood that specializes in training artists for careers in visual effects, games, and animation. With that, I'd like to introduce our fantastic guest who's with us today. So Ashley Stegon is a character artist at Cloud Imperium Games. She grew up in San Diego and moved to LA in high school to pursue a career in film or games. And she worked at Legacy Effects for 4 years as a character artist for rapid prototyping, and currently works at Cloud Imperium Games as a character artist. Ashley is a 2016 Gnomon alumni who graduated from the modeling and texturing program with a concentration in characters. And with that, I want to say, Ashley, welcome to the stream. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hi, guys. How's it going?
Hey, Ashley. Thanks for joining us today.
Of course. I'm always, it's kind of like coming full circle whenever you get to come back to Gnomon. So that's always a fun one.
Definitely. And I love getting to talk with our alumni, including you, because you guys are doing some really amazing things, which we'll get to talk about in just a bit. Actually, you've been out. You're just 4 years into your career. You're already working on some pretty amazing projects. But before we get into that, I just wanted to give our viewers an opportunity just to get to know you a little bit as an artist. Could you just tell us a little bit about your journey? Maybe, what first got you into art and what some of those first steps were for you?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I've always, ever since I was a kid, I was drawing. I always loved to draw, but I didn't know I wanted to do anything with it, nor did I think I could really do anything with it either. I wasn't sure there was even jobs for, drawing and art. And so it wasn't until high school when I realized that I could kind of I always had a fascination with behind the scenes of movies and games, and I always enjoyed watching them and growing up with them. And so I finally was able to kind of put the two together when I was in high school, and I was like, this is what I need to do. But I had no idea how to do it. And so I started following some artists that I really admired. Tara Whitlatch was like a really big inspiration for me because I loved animals. And I loved her like creatures and all that stuff. And I found her Gnomon DVD. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I love this. What is this Gnomon DVD thing? So I ran to my dad and I was like, Dad, let's look. Can we get this DVD? And I didn't even buy. And my dad was the one who was like, well, hold on. Like, what's Gnomon? Like, I don't even know what that is. And I was like, I don't know. I just need this DVD from Tara Whitlatch. And he was the one who actually dug deeper and found that, it was a visual effects school. And I discovered Gnomon when I was a junior in high school. And I was like, I think this is where I need to go and where I need to be. And so then through high school, I took some modeling classes at Art Center. And I took some character design classes at Art Center as well. And then I started going to individual courses. I started doing life drawing at Gnomon and taking Gnomon courses before I got accepted because I didn't have a portfolio. Like I didn't have anything to show. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so it was a long, hard 2 years of junior and senior high school trying to get together something that I thought was going to be acceptable for Gnomon. So yeah.
And was it acceptable for Gnomon?
Thankfully, yeah. I'm super surprised. Honestly, I knew I wasn't sure I was going to get it. I was jumping up and down when I finally got accepted, so it was really cool.
Well, I think every artist, feels that way about their own work. I don't know if it's going to be good enough,
yeah, definitely.
And before we get into your time at Gnomon, which I think it's amazing and I think very affirming that you went straight from high school into Gnomon. Actually,
yeah.
Your story shows that's possible. But before we get into that, because you mentioned like you knew when you were a junior that you really wanted to pursue this. Was there something or some project or something that you experienced that like kind of locked that in for you?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I actually played in Blender when I was like 12, but I didn't have any connection to it. I just knew I liked making stuff. I really enjoyed just making things, but I never made the connection to the two before until like I was a junior in high school. But the reason why I moved up to LA was actually because my little brother went to this martial arts studio, and I was sitting there sketching, waiting for him to be done with his lesson. And the guy who owned the studio, he saw that I was drawing and he was like, hey, I really like your drawings. He's like, come here for a second. I was like, okay. And there was this big, huge blank wall. And he was like, I painted it white and now I hate it. Can you do a mural?
Whoa.
And so I thought that was super cool. I was like, yeah, what do you want? And they teach 5 animals that represent, their martial arts studying and all this stuff. They're like, oh, can you do the 5 animals? Because I see you really like to draw animals. And I was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. So I spent the summer up there doing this mural. And what was so cool is while I was doing it, kids would come in and the instructors would come in and they'd, point and be like, oh, what's that? Oh, that's a tiger. Oh, the tiger represents power and does all. And it was so cool and rewarding to see my art being useful and my art being functional. And I thought it was just so cool that, art can kind of change or inspire anybody from anywhere. And so that really was kind of like the selling point of I really need to do something with my art. And I wasn't really sure what. But yeah, that was a big one for me. And after that, that was the summer when I was going into junior year, and that's when I told, my mom was like, hey, I gotta go up to LA and I gotta study and I gotta do this because this is what I want to do now. So
wow.
yeah.
That's an amazing story. And now, had you ever done a mural before that moment?
No, I'd never done a mural. I had no idea
Yeah.
what I did. So I actually drew them up in Photoshop, and I printed out on translucent paper, and I used one of those those old-fashioned Elmo projectors. And yeah, I started just tracing and then painting on top of it, because I really wasn't sure what else to do. But it was a big old wall, and it's unfortunately it's gone now. But that'll always stick out in my mind as one of the first things that I realized. How art can influence people and what you can do with just art. And it's really, and that's really why you do it, right? Is to be able to share your work and your ideas and to inspire others. And so I always remember that, and I will always remember that. So
well, and it's amazing what can happen, what can develop for you if you're willing to take that risk, right? Like, I've never done this before, but you know what? I'm going to do it.
I'm going to try,
Right.
It doesn't hurt to try. It never hurts to try. Definitely. And I think you do have to be vulnerable in that idea that, it could go terribly wrong, but that's okay. As long as I tried, I think is, the important thing. And, thankfully it worked out, and they liked the mural, and it got me started, because art's always a journey. You're never gonna, as an artist, you're never gonna be happy with the stuff you're making, and that's kind of the point. If you are satisfied with what you're making, then you're probably not improving. Because we're constantly looking for the next step. I mean, at least I am. I'm always searching for, okay, I did this thing, now what can I do to improve it? What can I do to make it even better, or even cooler, or more realistic, or more cartoony, or push the design more, and stuff like that. So yeah, you should always be searching.
Yeah. So you're a junior in high school. You find this Gnomon DVD. You find out about Gnomon, and you work really hard for 2 years, kind of building up art for yourself that you can use to submit. In hopes of getting admitted to Gnomon. So what were those 2 years like? Were you in communication with Gnomon, or like, how was that working?
Yeah, I had Brian Bradford. He was kind of my main counselor person, my main dude. And so I would go to Gnomon with my portfolio. I printed out all my pieces, and I showed it to him, and he gave me feedback on certain ones. And so all the ones he gave me feedback on, I was really active on, making the changes he suggested. And then showing it to him again and again and again, and just trying to stay really, really active in, because if they didn't want, because they were pretty skeptical. Not a lot of people came out of high school. I think I was actually one of the youngest, or one of the first people even accepted to Gnomon, like out of high school. Yeah, because it was just kind of rare. Yeah. It was just not
to
really
your point, though. I think this was this before our BFA program, our Bachelor of Fine Arts program? Yeah, and this was before we had. Was it before we had a foundation in art and design?
Yes.
Because I don't think you went through that, right? You were just cold turkey, like, I'm going straight from high school.
I didn't have your foundation program.
So we didn't
All
even
I had was Brian telling me, like, oh, do this, or oh, try that, or try to make this, this
because
thing.
We've got so many more resources for younger artists now. But this is amazing to hear that you like bridge that gap, and were one of the youngest students at the time at the school. So did you find that, like, Brian's feedback, and did that help you level up? Did it help you kind of discover what you needed to do?
I think it did, but I also just think it's important to be able to accept feedback, and notice that your art is not perfect, and be able to take that getting critiqued is one of, I think, the toughest things for most upcoming students, or even just artists. And I think it's super important to be able to handle critique well, and really you have to look at your own artwork kind of from a third person view. I know we tend to kind of like baby our artwork, or we fall in love with our own art. So it's really, really important to take feedback from others, and run with it. And if you're getting the right feedback from the right people, it's going to make your art better, or you're going to discover something that you didn't see along the way. So yeah. Yes,
no, it's so true. So what kind of art were you making as a junior in high school? What was your sketchbook filled with, or what kind of things were you working on?
So many dinosaurs.
Really?
So many dinosaurs. So
of course, Carol Whitlatch, right? She's one of your heroes.
Yeah. So I was big in creature design. I was really big. I love drawing animals. I still love drawing animals. When I was a kid, I thought I was going to be the next Steve Irwin, and my goal was to go to the Steve Irwin Zoo in Australia, and I was just going to live there. I wasn't really sure on any other plans, but that's what I wanted to do. So I was big into animals and creatures, and so my sketchbook was filled with like dragons and all sorts of different types of animals, and me trying to come up with my own designs of creature design and whatnot. And yeah, so that's kind of what my sketchbook was. And it's funny, I had a really nice art teacher who didn't really understand what I wanted to get into, because it's like the traditional art class of high school. I didn't have a fancy art school or high school. And that, we're doing like George O'Keeffe flower paintings. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I know what I want to do. I need to focus a portfolio on character design and creature design. She's like, I don't really know what that means. Most people don't. And I was like, just trust me. And so I was able to work it out with my high school high school teacher that, I didn't really do the normal assignments. I kind of made up my own to try to fit what I thought Gnomon would like to see, and what, as I was talking to Brian about like what he would like to see in my portfolio, because it's not, George O'Keeffe like tile paintings. So, that was really cool of my high school teacher to let me, follow and pursue what I wanted to do. I was very fortunate in that. So, yeah.
That's really good. And I actually do see that a lot now. Maybe it's a little more prevalent now in high schools. When I'm out talking to educators and meeting their students, I think if a student is passionate enough about something and the educator sees that passion and sees that drive, that like this is the thing that's going to drive them forward, I usually see that educators will go, okay, let's kind of bend this assignment towards what you're wanting to grow in and what you're wanting to do.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's super important to like let artists be artists, and because art's really all just about exploring, what you like to do and what you enjoy. It's not really about anything else. A lot of art is just exploring. So, and I think that's the part that makes it so fun, is it's so open to be whatever it is that you want it to be. So yeah, so I mean that it's super, super important to just follow what you enjoy doing.
Yes,
that's what I've always done.
So you were allowed to use your high school art experience, art class, as an opportunity to start working on that portfolio for Gnomon. And so you were taking the things that your teacher was teaching you in high school and applying that to the subject matter that you were wanting to do. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I think that's absolutely brilliant. That's actually literally the same advice that I give to high school students when I talk to them. It's like, you can do that. You can, you don't have to just, feel like you're stuck doing what everybody else expects of you.
I think that's where the big thing of just communication comes into play, because I think a lot of even students would be kind of scared to even ask. But you just have to be confident in asking, because you never know the answer. And communication is huge. It's so important to try to get the idea across that, like, look, I really know what I need to do. I really need to focus on X, Y, and Z. And if it wasn't for me just talking about it, I think it's important to talk to your students and mentors about, what it is you really want to achieve. And if you have good people behind you, they'll listen and they'll help as much as they can.
Yeah. Well, we're going to move forward to Gnomon in just a second, but I think you're establishing a really good point here too. And that is actually the skill sets you're learning in your high school classroom in art are applicable to what it was you're wanting to do in the art world, as applicable to that portfolio to get into Gnomon. And I'm just restating that because I do talk to a lot of people that are concerned about that, both students and educators. I've talked to students who are like, well, my art teacher isn't teaching me digital stuff. And I'm like, that's a little bit more beside the point. You've got to learn how to draw and how to compose and value studies and that kind of stuff. But then I've also talked to educators like, I don't know a lot of digital stuff. I feel like I'm not preparing my students for the industry. And I actually think they are. Because they're teaching how to do the fundamental stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely think, a lot of people put so much importance on the tool, when in reality, it's really just, it doesn't matter that it's the tool. What matters is your mileage. So for me, it's super important that whether you're drawing or sculpting in ZBrush, or whether ZBrush, the point is if you don't have ZBrush or you don't know ZBrush, that's okay. You'll learn ZBrush. That's what Gnomon's there for. But to get the mileage in understanding design, understanding forms, understanding lighting, getting the basics and understanding the fundamentals, that you don't need any fancy software for. You know, they've been doing that since, you know, since caveman paintings, honestly.
That's right.
So all you need is some paint and a rock wall, and you're pretty much good to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's super important to just continue to be curious and not feel don't feel like you're behind just because, you know, you don't know ZBrush. If anything, I think you could technically get ahead by kind of waiting on most of those programs and just really focusing on fundamentals, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, sort of moving forward and looking toward Gnomon, and to catch anybody else up, just because I want to be friendly to anybody else that might not know some of the terms that we're using. For example, Terrell Whitlatch, who Ashley's been talking about, amazing creature designer who started out working mostly traditionally. If you haven't seen Terrell's work, go check her work out. If you like to draw dragons, and I know a lot of people like to draw dragons today, go look at Terrell's work. We've got a content on our YouTube channel of Terrell giving a talk to Gnomon students that you can look at for free. She's amazing. And then you mentioned ZBrush. For anybody that doesn't know what ZBrush is, it's basically a piece of software that allows you to use traditional sculpting techniques with digital clay. So Ashley, I think you are also doing a little bit of sketching in ZBrush while we're talking. Is that right?
I am. I'm trying to get out some fun stuff while I'm talking. Yeah.
Is it okay if we put your screen up?
Of course. Yeah. I'm just
awesome.
sculpting a little bat creature here.
Okay, so perfect segue into Gnomon. So you're doing some stuff in ZBrush right now. Can you talk to us a little bit about? So now you're this freshly graduated high school, you know, graduate, and you've pulled that artwork together, and you submitted that artwork. You've gotten accepted to Gnomon, and now you're really kind of setting off into that adventure of like, what is this 3D stuff, and how does it relate to everything that I've been doing up to this point?
Right.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So one thing that I would have to say is, you know, don't be afraid of 3D programs. I think a lot of people are afraid of 3D programs. And at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of buttons. And so it's really nothing to be, you know, afraid of. But I think, honestly, for me, when it came to, once you understand the program, you just take this time. It's really just about knowing what button is where, ultimately. I think my fundamental skills in sculpting, because I sculpted in clay before, and I drew, like I said, I draw and still draw a lot and drew a lot. And I've never really stopped drawing. I think all that is super, super helpful, even if you don't know ZBrush, you know, because as I'm sculpting right now, I'm not focused on the fact that I'm, you know, in a crazy, you know, quote unquote technical tool. What I'm looking at right now is silhouette. I'm looking at form, and I'm really only using one brush. It's not, you know, it's nothing fancy. I'm just sitting here having fun, trying to, you know, come up with something cool. And you know, you don't. I'm not worried about the tool. It's the same thing. It's almost as if you're like, oh, should I learn? I use a pencil, but now I should use pen. You know, it's like, it's the same thing. It just has more buttons. That's all it is. So I kind of tend to approach 3D programs that way, where it's really just, a lot of them do the same things. It's just a matter of, you know, where is that button, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, I think the most helpful thing for me was, a lot of people open up ZBrush and they're like, I don't know what to do, you know? And I think a great thing to do that I do with people that I teach, you know, ZBrush for, is I say, have a project. You know, a lot of people like open it up and they're like, I don't know what to do. And you're like, well, yeah, of course, I wouldn't know what to do either. So have a project. Say, I want to, you know, model a watch, or I want to, you know, make a cool bust of a creature, or I want to do a werewolf, or, you know, just have something that you want to do, so you have steps and you have something to go, okay, I need to make a head. Okay, how do I do that? And if your topology starts getting all wonky, okay, how do I fix that? Do I Dynamesh or do I Z-remesh? And you can start learning things slowly, and then it becomes not so overwhelming. At least that's kind of how I took it, and that's kind of how I learned, was, you know, one step at a time in your process, and Google's right there to help you all along the way. YouTube has amazing, you know, videos and tutorials. I still go on to Ask ZBrush because
Yeah.
and it's funny because the Ask ZBrush thing, they'll be like, how do I do blah blah blah, and most of the time, yeah, that's helpful, but he'll I always forget his name. I think his name's Michael Pavlovich or something
Oh
like that.
yeah, Michael Pavlovich. He's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, he's amazing because he'll do stuff where it's like he'll press a button and he'll do something in ZBrush that I still didn't even know was a thing. So you just got to kind of keep exploring. I'm constantly finding new stuff in ZBrush that I didn't know about. So you're never going to learn the whole program.
Well, one of the things I love about what you're doing here, and even the particular brush you're using, because I do some stuff in ZBrush, is it's really a lot like you're kind of just drawing. You're drawing the clay onto the adding and subtracting clay to the bust here.
Yeah. That's really all I'm doing. And most of the time, I like the clay buildup because I feel like I'm overlaying muscles. It just feels more natural to me. And I like the little texture that it tends to leave. And then when I go in and start adding like some noise and stuff for like skin texture, it kind of leaves a feeling that there's like fats and different stuff underneath the skin. Because it's not just you can't pretend that it's clay. You got to pretend that it's a living thing. That's got a bunch of stuff underneath that's going on under there.
So what was it like at Gnomon learning some of this stuff? I mean, can you tell us a little bit about what the student experience was like for you?
Yes, it's super fun. I think my biggest advice to most people is stay at Gnomon for as long as you can, meaning the people who would go home to like sit and sculpt in their, in the dark corner of their rooms or wherever they were, living, they don't improve nearly as much as the people who are sitting there struggling together. You learn ZBrush as a team. You learn it as a group. And I think it's super important to communicate because what one person will take away from a 3-hour class, somebody else will take away something totally different. And I think it's really important to talk to your termmates and to talk to the people around you. You're also going to have students who are, again, at the very end of their terms, who have been, sitting in Maya and ZBrush for, 3 years, sitting at a computer doing it far longer than you have. And don't be afraid to go up and be like, hey, where's the insert, sphere button? I don't know where that is. And you're like, oh, I'll show you. Everybody there's super friendly, don't be afraid. So I think that's my biggest takeaway from being at Gnomon is that the networking that you get is so important. And again, I wouldn't be at my current job right now if I didn't have my friends from Gnomon. That's how I got recommended for the job that I have now. So I think that's the most important thing is staying connected, with all your termmates, and learning together is super important. I know you're doing usually projects separately, but you really are learning together.
That's right. Well, and I think I'll jump in really quick and say, because I think that is a really big concern for students today, especially in social distancing. So many college campuses are closed, including Gnomon's. But we actually had already built, like, custom made an online platform for some of our online classes before the pandemic hit. And so when we needed to close campus to, keep our students safe, we were able to move our entire program, all of our classes, everything onto that platform. And it is designed to provide exactly the kind of connection that you're talking about.
You are going home. I had a really crazy long commute when I was at Gnomon. I had to drive like an hour an hour or an hour and a half in traffic because of LA just to get there. So I would stay. But, if you are at home, and then right now we are all at home, like I do my best to do Google Hangouts, do little virtual meetups, do like what we did last night for this Gnomon stream where you're, in that program and you're all doing art together. I think that all that stuff is super important because you're always going to learn something, when you're working with other artists. So yeah, staying active in that I think is super, super important. Don't try to learn alone, because if you learn alone, you're only learning what you already know.
That's so true. So, oh yeah.
And you're going to fall into the same habits over and over again too. So I think it's really important to get other opinions and see how other people work. And it's just also so inspiring. I mean, I always want to see what my Gnomon term buddies are doing and what they're working on, because they're always creating cooler stuff than I am. So motivating each other to, stay active and constantly be curious and exploring, I think
Yes.
is really important.
Well, and the best thing about I think that kind of experience in a good academic environment like what Noma provides is it gives you a safe space to fail, and to fail faster with your peers
Yeah.
and to learn from your
Yes,
failures,
definitely.
which I know a lot of artists can be really scared of that, right? Like we want every sketch to be perfect, but really it's
With,
about,
with social media stuff, even I
oh my
fall into
gosh,
that
yeah.
where you're like, oh my God, I need to post this. So it has to look, amazing. And my suggestion for stuff like that is, yeah, definitely, learn together, fail together, and then you'll succeed together. But when it
Mhm.
comes to your drawings, don't make them precious. If you don't want to show your sketchbook to people, don't. Your sketchbook is a place where, you can make a bunch of mistakes and let them be just for you. It's where you learn and where you explore. I was actually
Yeah.
just watching Trojan Horse was a Unicorn has some really great sketchbook sessions with people,
Hmm.
and Scott Eaton was on there, and he brought his sketchbooks and he started talking about how he's like, these are where this is where I fail, and he was about to open one, and then he's like, actually I can't do it, and he didn't open his sketchbook to show to people, which was like the whole point of the YouTube videos. They're supposed to scroll through their sketchbook, but he ended up not doing it because he was like, this is personal. It's like a personal diary for me. It's where I visually explore, and you allow yourself to fail, and you have no pressure of showing it to anybody. It's just where you can learn and you can jot down ideas. And I think that is also really important to keep for
Yes.
Gnomon students. You do not have to show every single little sketch. The sketches that we see on Instagram from all these amazing artists, they have so much more mileage than most of us. They have way more mileage than I have. They have like, 20 years mileage. So yeah, of course my sketches aren't going to look like theirs, and I can't be unmotivated by that. I have to be motivated by that to be like,
That's
well,
right.
20 years from now, maybe I'll be there too,
Yeah. Well, and I
Just
think
have
this, you can kind of, when you are able to like take that plunge, and even when you're putting on limited mileage, the ability to go back and look at work from a year ago, if you're consistently drawing, if you're consistently
Mhm.
doing the work, you can get addicted to progress.
Oh,
It's like
definitely.
there's that, I think it's very different than like performing on social media and getting likes. I think it's a very different kind of a reward that you experience when you know that you're doing it for you, and you can see that you're growing. And everything you're saying is the way that you achieve that,
Mhm.
to get there. Okay, so I was wondering, I know that you've got a 2D sketch that you did, to kind of give you, because you mentioned earlier about don't jump into something like this program ZBrush without a sense of a plan of like what you want to do.
Yeah.
So would you mind sharing your plan with us?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, I love drawing on Procreate. I have my iPad and it follows me everywhere. So I did some of these sketches. I don't remember when. I think it was like a few days ago. And I was just doing some studies of bats, and I was looking at some pigs and stuff. And this guy kind of popped out of it, which was like this, mix. I love the forms and shapes of those big fat pigs that you get. I just think they're so cool. There's so much cool volume and shapes there. So I kind of just combined the two, and I came up with this
Yeah.
like kind of happy fat bat. So I thought it was fun, and I thought it was just something fun to sculpt that I would feel comfortable probably sculpting. And yeah, so I usually tend to, I don't do it as much as I should, but really what I think is important to make a habit of is if you're continuing your art career, I think it's important to uh, create ideations for yourself and
Mhm.
to keep that foundation, that 2D foundation really strong, and then just pick one and go for it. Maybe this isn't
Yeah.
everybody's favorite, but this one was mine. I thought this guy was kind of cool too. But this is where I explore, and I find it much easier to explore on 2D than I do in 3D. Because yeah, sometimes with ZBrush you can be kind of fighting a program, and I don't get to make as many fun shapes sometimes. With this guy, once you get into 3D, you can start pushing forms more and starting to explore. But I think to get some general ideas, I personally enjoy doing the 2D stuff, and I think it's
Yeah.
important to to stick with that.
Oh yeah, 100%. and I know as well at Gnomon, I'll be talking more about it later, but we're teaching artists for digital production, which is going to be a 3D production pipeline. But we have a lot of 2D classes that are part of that education. Like we're still teaching the fundamentals from figure drawing to anatomy. We got design classes learning how to design, anatomy for creatures and, human type characters. And then also designing things that are going to be more hard surface, like vehicles and mechs and so forth. So you can't really separate those two because I think we were talking about before the stream, like it's not, the tool doesn't make the artist. 3D is a tool, but
a tool.
Art is art.
Yep.
Yeah.
Always. And I always relate that back to when I was at Legacy, there's a traditional sculptor. I mean, there's a lot of traditional sculptors there, but there's a guy there, his name's Glenn Hans, and he is not a computer man whatsoever. He's a traditional sculptor. And he's one of the most amazing traditional sculptors I've ever met. And, we taught him very simple ZBrush. And that guy can out-sculpt anybody in ZBrush. And it's not because he knows ZBrush. It's because he's had, 40 years of sculpting traditionally, behind him. And, you see the same thing. Whoa. Did something weird there. And you see the same thing with a lot of these artists who didn't touch Photoshop for a long time and stayed traditional, and then they're in Photoshop and they do something amazing, and it's not the tool that's making them do something amazing. Yeah. It's the fact that they've, been at this craft for so long and they've been pushing and they're continuing to push,
Yeah, no, it reminds me of the stream that you mentioned that we literally just did last night. So we've got 4 amazing, creature designers, and they could have gone into this program we're using and like worried about layers and blending modes and all these things, but really they were just getting on there and for the most part just painting alla prima. Like they were just jumping in and doing it.
And doing it.
Yeah,
that's all it takes
for sure. Okay, so it kind of transitioning to talking a little bit about your career. I wanted to first talk about your role in the industry. And, we've sort of established this idea of like, you're very much a 2D artist. You're doing a lot of drawing. You're getting your ideas from drawing, and you're learning how to translate your 2-dimensional ideas and explorations into a 3-dimensional medium. With what you are doing, what you have done for film and television, as well as for games, why is it important to be able to use a 3D tool for production?
So nowadays for 3D, working at Legacy Effects, I think one of the biggest things is we do rapid prototyping, meaning we do 3D printing is basically what that is. Legacy's been doing it for a long time where we model stuff out and then we print it and they mold it, cast it, and it goes either, it's either, the Mandalorian suit or it's a maquette for your sideshow, or, it serves a lot of different things and purposes. So for them, it's a lot easier to start in 3D doing concept because we can then print it and show it to the client immediately. There's really no workaround. If they want to see the back, they can see the back. If they want to see the front, side, views, we have all the views, of the design that we're trying to convey. And then on top of that, if you can get the sculpt done, then you're halfway there to getting it printed as well. So it saves a lot of, production time as well. So, where the industry as a whole is going, 3D is a extremely valuable tool. Even people who have done, traditional art their whole lives just, are starting to use 3D because clients are asking more and more for, hey, can we see the back? And you're like, oh, crap. You're like, I don't have the back. I just drew one drawing, but for 3D, they want to see the back of this bat. It's like, I mean, it's nothing much, but you're like, it's there. I have it, and I can create something from it. So it's a very versatile tool in that sense.
Yeah. Well, and for games, like you don't even really get a game character these days without being able to translate that design into 3D. And a lot of times, like in a, you spend the entire game looking at the back of the character, right? Like
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So super important.
So would you say then that, it's you're being an artist working in the industry that you're working in and being an artist for digital production, it's still the art of it. and you're thinking like a 2D artist, but you're just needing, like you said, going from pencil to pen. You're just needing to go to that tool that is going to help the people that are building the product do what they need to do with that character or creature.
Yeah, and honestly, I think a lot of it also just has to do with, you can't get stuck being like, oh, drawing is the only true art form, because at this point, at the end of the day, you do have to remember we're production, we're creating something. And if, there's some producers or there's some directors who don't really respond to 2D, they only respond to 3D, really well, because they can really visualize and see. And it's not about your artistic opinion when at that point. It's really important to kind of let go of that ego and say, okay, I'm really working for the client. And what does the client visualize? What does the client need? And I think a good example of that is when I was at Legacy, we worked with Tim Burton to make that the Las Vegas Museum that was displayed
awesome.
last year.
That's great.
That was one of the coolest experiences, was to have him, like, he was sitting in a chair next to you and you're like, it's Tim Burton. Like, and I use him as an example because, again, he has a very, very particular art style, right? And at that point, you have to let go of your ego and really try to figure out what he needs from you in order to achieve his vision and achieve what he wants. And as an artist, like, once you understand that, it's super rewarding to see somebody else's characters like kind of come to life and be a part of that is always really, really cool.
Well, and you got to help bring those characters to life, right? Like, you breathe life into it's not like you're going to stop and go.
Practical effects is you really do bring characters to life, there.
Yeah.
So it's super fun.
I think I've done more concept and design over the years, and one of the things that I really admire about character artists for games, or creature artists, or anyone for that matter who's actually making the 3D asset that's going to be on screen, is you're literally making what the people are going to see. It's so often that in concept design, you kind of got to be in love with the process, because more often than not, nobody's actually seeing what you did.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, there's so many people. I mean, it takes an army to get what you see on screen done. And, not one single person can ever take credit for any of it. It really is a team of people. And at Legacy, it was one of the coolest experiences to be a part of, where you print, I model a helmet, they print it out, they mold it, they cast it, they paint it up to make it look like it's all damaged paint, when in reality it's just, some crazy plastic material, and that goes on. Oh, I'm sorry. It's metal, it's real.
Yeah.
And that goes on an actor, and then, when you see it on screen, when you see it on set, I mean, the great example is, obviously everybody loves that Baby Yoda. Nobody on set goes up to the Baby Yoda and is like, oh, that's a really cool puppet. Everybody goes up and goes, what's up, Baby Yoda? They start trying to play with it, and they start trying to talk to it in baby talk, because it's not a puppet. At that point, it becomes real, and I think the magic of that, I mean, it really does take an army to get that kind of magic in. And it's so rewarding to see. It's so cool.
Yeah, no, and okay, so perfect. You just transitioned to the Mandalorian, because today is the day that season 2 has dropped. I don't know if you've seen the first episode or not, but I haven't. I watched it literally in the first minutes it was available. And don't worry, guys, no spoilers here, no spoilers whatsoever. I'm not going to say anything's going to give anything away, but you go to Gnomon straight out of high school. You're one of the youngest students at Gnomon at the time, and then you graduate in 2016. You're just 4 years into your career, and you've worked on The Mandalorian. You've worked on other really incredible projects. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of those?
Yeah. So, I mean, I at the time they were doing an internship program at Gnomon, and it just so happened that Legacy had never done an internship program with Gnomon, but that year they did, and I don't think they've ever done one since. So it was very, very good timing. But my work was very much towards creature work and character work, which is the only thing that Legacy does, is all creature. It's all characters, and I really love that about Legacy. And so they saw my portfolio. I went in for the interview, and I got the internship position there, along with like a couple other Gnomon students. And at the end of it, They kept, I think, 2. I think they kept all of it. Actually, I think they may have kept all of us.
Wow.
Now that I
Yeah.
think about it. And again, and they've never done the internship program since. But yeah, so I got very, very fortunate that I got to jump in, head first into a company that, I mean, let's be honest, they pretty much created all of our childhoods. I mean, they were originally Stan Winston Studio. So there's
right.
not a person in this industry that you can think of that doesn't say Jurassic Park, that doesn't say Aliens. And yeah, so to be in a studio with so much experience is, quite honestly, it's terrifying at first, because you're working with people who, I mean, they really did. They built my childhood. They built why I wanted to even get into this industry. And now, I'm working next to Trevor Hensley, who like puppeteered, the Terminator,
Oh, man.
and painted, every living known thing that I ever watched,
Yes.
practically. And,
Yeah.
I'm working with Scott Patton, who's worked on all the Avatar films, and who, I mean, he got its start from Tales of the Crypt. So you're talking about people who just have so much experience. And I think the important thing that came out of that was, I wanted to be the dumbest person in the room. I wanted to absorb as much as I could from that place, because there's just so much experience. And just because they didn't know ZBrush or they didn't know 3D doesn't mean I couldn't learn from them. I understood a lot of, I mean, I'm not really showing any examples of it now, but I understood how to paint maquettes, in 3D, and how to texture in 3D, because I listened to people who do it traditionally, who paint silicone, who paint skin, and understanding how they do that and what they do and the techniques that they use. It's all applicable to, your 3D work, and same thing with sculpting and designing and all that stuff. So, yeah, we were really fortunate. The first project I worked on was, I believe it was Pacific Rim 2. And I did we helped build all the suits for that. And then
Awesome.
I worked on, I got really lucky and also got to work on Avengers Infinity War. And I did we did big light reference maquettes for like Cull Obsidian, Ebony Maw.
Oh, man.
And
That's so cool.
that one was super cool. I was the lead on the Cull Obsidian maquette. He was like, at the end, he's huge. He ended up being like 4 feet tall. And working on something like that with, everybody at Marvel who's worked so hard on those designs and creating those characters and having them come to life on set was really, really rewarding.
Yes.
And then, yeah, to The Mandalorian, I've worked on seasons 1, 2, and can't say anything else about that, but I've wanted to. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yes.
But,
leave it up to the imagination.
Yeah, we'll leave it to that. But yeah, to create those suits is something else. I mean, we all have bucket lists, right? And I think a lot of us have Star Wars as a bucket list on, a project that we want to work on. I think it's just natural for everybody in this industry, and there's definitely a reason why. I think the designs are so fun, and you're part of something so much bigger than you, because the world knows Star Wars. So the task of making something cool from such a well-known and inspiring and motivating and jaw-dropping, basically film history changing, right?
That's right.
Project is it can be scary, but I mean, when you're working with ILM, you're working with people who know the Star Wars language, like, it's like their first language, basically. So working with Brian Mateus, working with Doug Chang, working with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni on this stuff, made it so much fun. And being able to, bring those concepts to life, I think was super, super rewarding.
Yes. Well, and I think while you're talking about that, I want to ask, how do you feel that your time at Gnomon prepared you for being in that world? And I think we've already covered, the technical side, right? We've talked about the coursework and those kind of things, but I think there's a whole other thing of like just becoming prepared as a person and as someone, as an artist, not just someone who knows a lot of things that they can do. How do you feel like Gnomon added to you and developed you as a person to be able to do some of these amazing things that you've gotten to be on?
I think Gnomon for me, the biggest thing that I think it helped me was not to be afraid to jump into something new. Because you're constantly learning like new programs at Gnomon. You're constantly jumping back and forth from all these different things and different projects, and you're constantly trying to study all sorts of things because you have like a million projects per term. And yeah, we all work super late nights till 2 o'clock in the morning on our stuff. And I think the biggest takeaway from Gnomon that prepared me for Legacy was just my confidence in my own ability to learn. Because at Gnomon, we learn so fast. I don't think people understand how fast like Gnomon students learn these programs and learn these tools, and then be able to actually like make something really cool out of it. Because I didn't learn technically the rapid prototyping. I didn't learn the prepping for 3D printing. But I'm not afraid of new pipelines, and I think Gnomon really helps with that. I'm not afraid of any sort of new program or new pipeline that comes down the gate, as long as I'm comfortable in my foundations. And as long as I feel comfortable as an artist to actually not know as much as I need to know, and to be able to continue to learn. I think that's the biggest takeaway from Gnomon is at Gnomon they teach you to never stop learning. You know,
That's well said. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's super, super important is, don't be scared of not knowing a bunch of stuff. I was in rooms with people who, are all older than me, they've honestly had more experience than I've been alive. I'm only 25. So, they all have like 40 years experience. So, you can't be afraid to, be the young whippersnapper, so to speak, because I brought a lot to the table too, as most Gnomon students do to most places, because we're learning, the newest of the new. We're constantly exploring all these new programs and all these new things to do to push ourselves to be better artists. And I honestly was one of the first people at Legacy who really taught how to do ZBrush for prepping and 3D printing, because at the time when I started at Legacy, there wasn't the Boolean stuff. And then when the Boolean stuff came out, everybody at Legacy lost their minds because we're constantly having to cut and prep and 3D print these things and cut all these things up and add keys to stuff and, add clearances to things. And having that feature in ZBrush it exploded our pipeline.
Yeah.
And me and all the other people in the digital team were kind of like the forefront of that, and being confident and comfortable in that program to learn how to adapt our pipeline to something to be more efficient and better. And that's just because I don't want to stop learning. I want to continue to know more and more and more, because you're never going to know everything. So you just got to keep going.
Well, and speaking of never knowing everything, if there's anybody out there that's like, what the heck is a Boolean? What's that about? Why is that so important? Essentially, and you probably can explain it better than I am, but a Boolean allows you to cut out certain shapes from a 3D structure in a very simple way.
Boom, Boolean, right there.
Yeah, there you go. That's the best explanation. Just do it. So instead of having to sculpt that or to like subtract that sculpturally from your model, you're able to just throw in that square and it just takes out that chunk.
Yeah, and then what's great is I can invert it, and now I have this piece. So when it comes to like prepping and printing things, this is one of the most valuable tools that we had at Legacy, because we can see it in real time. Where when you're molding stuff, you can't have undercuts. You have to split parts in very specific ways, so that way they can actually pop it out of the mold and not get stuck. So to have the mold guys sit behind you and look at this and go, hey, is this going to be good? And they're like, oh, no, you got to fill the back teeth in because we're not going to be able to pull that out. Or what if we printed it, at this shape? And they're like, oh, that might work. And so being able to be live and active with your fellow teammates who don't understand 3D, but you need them to, this is super, super helpful. So yeah, it's just another thing of knowing the tool and understanding how to use it for your pipeline. That's super valuable.
Well, and you're reminding me also of, like, I've talked to a lot of artists who have learned how to take their 2D drawing sense into 3D and ZBrush, and they're also working in the toy industry or the collectibles industry. Like, Sideshow Collectibles, a lot of it's all the stuff for the Mandalorian that they've done. I think the Baby Yoda life-size statue you can get was literally taken from the Legacy molds, right?
I modeled the base for that.
You did? That's all. You know what?
Yeah,
Before while I was waiting for the clock to strike midnight last night, so I could start the first episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian, I was killing time by watching an Adam Savage review of Baby Yoda from Sideshow, and one of the first things he pulls out of the box is the base. And he's like, this is beautiful. Like, they even have this really nice base, and there's like artwork on the bottom stuff. And I remember thinking, somebody made that. Somebody made that base,
I had to make that in like a day. I think I was like, hey, can you make a base for Baby Yoda? John came to me and I was like, yeah, I can do it. And then, it's a very simple base. That's the thing about Star Wars. It's all very simple shapes. They're just kind of thrown together in a pretty fashion.
Which sometimes can be harder than it sounds, though.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
It's definitely trickier than it sounds. It's not simple does not mean easy.
Yep.
Is simple, if anything, means the opposite.
Right.
I think there's a quote that I've always liked where it says, making the complicated more complicated is easy. Making the complicated more simple is art, or something like that.
Oh,
it
that's
goes
good.
It's from a musician.
I like that.
If anybody remembers what it is, great.
Yeah.
Give me a shout out. But yeah. So it is the same thing. Simplifying those forms and simplifying those things makes it's definitely not an easy thing. Mandalorian helmets are not just cylinders on people's heads. They are so much more.
Much to the chagrin of people who they dubbed Boba Fett Buckethead, I think was it's not a bucket, guys. It's a complex shape.
It is a pretty complex shape. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've tried to model a Mandalorian helmet in ZBrush, and it's one of the things that I've used to force me to level up my game, because it's deceptively simple looking, but it's actually hard to do.
Simple. Yeah. All the Star Wars stuff it's all very deceptively simple. And that's where I less is more most of the time when it comes to really sculpting anything, honestly. Less is always more. And I think Star Wars is always a really great example of that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, guys, I should mention, and we're coming to that time soon, but my colleague, Xander, who is actually one of our advisors at Gnomon, one of the people that you could talk to that Ashley mentioned when she was applying to get into Gnomon, she spoke to someone by the name of Brian Bradford, and his role was to essentially help coach her and help her, find her way forward in getting ready to apply to Gnomon. Xander does the same thing. He's in the chat. He's ready to answer any questions about Gnomon. I'm sure he probably already has, but he's also there to receive questions that you might have for Ashley and to feed them through to me. And so in a few moments, I'll take some time to ask them your questions to Ashley, because we want you to have a chance to do that as well. But I think kind of maybe as a way to kind of prime for that conversation, what would you, and I'm going to get very specific, because you've got a very specific story going straight from high school into Gnomon. It wasn't common at all the time that you did it. It's becoming more common today because of things like our foundation in art and design. We have a full 4-year degree program now. So we've got more. I talked to a lot more juniors and seniors in high school. They're like, I want to go to Gnomon. So thinking of those students, thinking of the high school student who spent most of their time, drawing and painting. Maybe they haven't done any 3D, but they're looking at what you're doing and they're looking at this whole world saying, I really want to be a part of that. What advice would you have for them?
That is a good question. The one thing that I always relate back to is I remember so specifically telling myself that when I got into Gnomon, to never stop drawing. But I come from always loving and wanting to draw. But whatever, I think the most important thing is whatever it is that got you to want to go to Gnomon, don't stop doing it. I met a lot of people there who, they all came from a traditional background or graphic design or whatever it was. But you get so wrapped up in doing 3D, you get so wrapped up in learning the programs, and you will learn the programs. You will learn so much there. But I think it's really important to continue to draw. I always told myself, I know it sounds like I'm a bad student, but I'd always be drawing in class. I'd always have a sketchbook. But I can do that. I'm very good at talking and drawing at the same time, or listening and drawing at the same time.
Or sculpting and talking, apparently. Yeah.
I'm just really talking to myself all the time anyway, so it works out. But, whatever it is that got you to begin doing what you're doing and continuing the path that you're doing, just don't stop doing that. Because for me, I I don't think I would be where I'm at if I didn't just continue to draw, because drawing for me is where I explore the most of my art, and it's where I figure out what I like to do, and what I enjoy doing. And it reminds me of what I love to do. I love to, draw dinosaurs. I love to create all this stuff. And sometimes we can get kind of bogged down by, feeling we need to get a job and feeling like we need to pay our student loans. We're all still in that same boat. But you didn't pick the art career because you're here to pay off all your student loans in a year. You're here because you love to do it. It is a true job of passion. And so you just really got to stay true to that. I think that's super important.
Yeah, definitely. Don't lose your passion, because that's what you're going to build on.
Yeah. On top of that, like, for me, I went to a bunch of expos. So I went to CTN, and I talked to one of my favorite artists, David Coleman, there, and I showed him my sketchbook. I showed him my drawings. So you can't be afraid of that either. Go up to people and just be like, please look at the art that I'm making, and give me feedback. And he gave me feedback, and I remember drawing and stuff. And what's so cool is, about maybe a few months ago, he actually messaged me on Instagram saying like, hey, he's like, there's some I think he said something like, there's some really strong stuff here. He's like, this is awesome. And he just saw one of my posts on Instagram, and he just commented. He didn't remember who I was or anything, but it was so cool to hear from him, because he, from the beginning when I was in high school, like, gave me some advice about my artwork.
Yeah.
That I took to heart, and that I continue to take to heart, And so it's really important to, like, reach out to people. We're all very friendly, always feel free to reach out to me. I'm around, and I'm alive, and I'm we all are during this pandemic, believe it or not. But it is really important, and it was so cool to have that come full circle. And I told him the story that I was like, oh, you were one of the first people that I would, like, talk to who was a professional that was inspiring for me in high school, and to, like, hear you really actually comment and love my work and do all this stuff like that means a lot to me. So networking is super, super important. Go to every event you can. I mean, you guys are here, so whoever's here listening to this, like, good job. You're doing probably 80% of what you should be doing, is just talking to people and networking and getting to know, the people around you in your industry, because those are the people that are going to get you the job.
Yeah. Well, and it's always moving outside of your comfort zones. I think it's people who feel more introverted. I know that can be really hard, the networking side of it. But I think for people who are extroverted, there are equally as difficult things for them to move into as well. So it's all about being willing to push yourself beyond. But I couldn't agree more. I've had so many wonderful experiences of, just reaching out to some of my heroes and discovering that they actually wanted to take the time to write me back. These are amazing people. And I think all of them can remember what it was like to be a young artist and to feel insecure and to not know if you're good enough or not know what to do. So I think they know that just a few words make all the difference in the world.
It really does go a long way. And I think it's super important to remind yourself of that. Like, Rob Bliss is one of my favorite artists, and I always look at his work and I'm just like, damn it, I'm never going to be as good.
But then what does that make you do after that?
That makes me sit down and, like, I got to sculpt some stuff, or like, I got to draw some stuff,
That's right.
And, I've been fortunate enough that he actually came to Legacy, and I got to say hi to him, which was really cool. But don't let it get you down. You should really let it motivate you to reach out to these people, because we've all been there. I'm sure probably all of you and all the Gnomon students at Gnomon even right now are, like, far better than I ever was, and probably better than I am now, but that's okay. Art is a journey, and we all get there in different ways. We all get there at our own time. You just have to be really patient with it, and try not to get too bogged down or stressed if you feel like your art's not good enough, because welcome to art, welcome to the art struggle,
That's right. No, it's just an analogy, but I'm also a musician, and I remember being with some friends watching a performance that we really enjoyed. And this guitar player came out and played this amazing solo, and it really, blew our minds, right? And my friend turned to me and said, "That's it, man. I'm going home and breaking my guitar. I'm never going to play again." And I just couldn't understand that, because all I wanted to do was, I was struggling. Like, I can't wait to get home and play more.
I can't wait to get home and play more.
Yeah.
It is hard. It's super hard sometimes to look at your work and think like, oh man, I can't wait to get home and like improve. Because we all just want to be there. You know, we want the answer to be like, what brush do you use? That one? Okay, now I'm an artist. You know, you want it to be that, but it's not. You know,
That's right.
It's a lot of time spent drawing, sculpting, whatever it is that you like to do, you know. You know, drawing little doodles and then photo bash. Everybody has their own different style, you know, and there is no wrong answer. That's at all. As long as you're doing it, there's no wrong answer.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, I wanted to ask you if you had the opportunity to meet Terrell Whitlatch. One of your heroes?
I actually have never been able to show her any of my work. I didn't do that, unfortunately. She was always one that I was like too scared of. I was like, because she's so nice. She is so nice.
She's the sweetest person. Yeah.
At CTM, I went to all of her talks, and I think she started to notice me throughout the day. She was like, "You're stalking me," and I was like, "Yeah, kind of." You know, she would basically repeat the same thing, you know, the same event, but I still went anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was definitely one of my favorites. That's a huge thing too, is, you know, I mean, you can see behind, I have like a bunch of books that I absolutely love to go through. And it's important that I open them up and, you know, do some studies from your favorite artists, understand and try to break down, you know, why you like them and what you like about their work. And, you know, it's not just copying, it's trying to understand, you know, why do I like it? You know, because if you can understand why you like it, then you can kind of start to relate it back into your own work. You know, and that's super, super important too, is to constantly just, again, exploring.
Yes.
Super important.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that we had a great stream with Ian McKeag not too long ago, and he took that principle you're talking about, like what do I like about this? And he was saying that even if he gets on a project where he's needing to make something that it's kind of like he's not really excited about that thing, like this doesn't inspire me to make whatever this thing is. He just said he sort of hijacks it. He finds something that does inspire him, and then he kind of brings that into the design, or he brings that into the approach to it. So I think that creativity can be an incredible tool to cause you to do more than you might have not been able to do before.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You'll always find something that you can enjoy in the process, because otherwise, like, why else would you be doing it? You know, there's always something to have fun with.
Now we've got a question from the chat from let's see, Hamada Abdul, and they're saying I'm really struggling with rendering stuff because I'm a self-learner. How can I get better at rendering? Are there any, you know, resources or thoughts that you can share that might help get someone pointed in the right direction when it comes to rendering their work?
Yeah, rendering is something. I mean, that's where 3D comes in a lot of times, right? Is, you know, I'm not I wouldn't say my 2D drawing style is the greatest at rendering, but I recently did. Oh, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to show it. We'll see what happens. But I think it's important to, this is where 3D for me became really important, is you can block something out in 3D and put a light on it, and you'll immediately get some really great information. And once you take that and you can draw on over it, you can paint on top of it. You know, Rob Bliss does that exact thing. He does a lot of sculpting in ZBrush and then paints on top, and he does his own thing. And I don't want people to think that that's a cheat. It's not a cheat. Because I've been doing 3D for so long, that when I go and sit and do my own 2D work, I feel a lot more confident about where I can put shadows and how to simplify things and how to simplify your lighting. That's a huge one. Just use one light source, keep it simple, keep it graphic, I think is really important. Value studies go a long way. You know, a lot of people want to throw in as many values as they can into a painting because they think that's what's going to look cool. But if you can just get away, like, you know, if I was to draw this bat right now again, you know, and if I put a light on him, if I was going to draw it, why is it taking so long all of a sudden now? Something magical happened. So, you know, this is the terrible lighting source because ZBrush is awful. But, you know, look at the shapes that you're getting look at the shadow shapes that you're getting, and really try to block this out using white and black, you know, or maybe even just a middle color. So keep it simple, you know, use a white, use a middle gray, use black and try to create a drawing that has volume to it. And don't bog down with color yet. Don't try to, do anything crazy. Keep it very, very simple. I think you'd be thoroughly surprised by the result. And then from there, as you start getting more comfortable with a 3-value system, then maybe you can bump it up to a 5-value system. But even most, like, if you look at expert, digital painters or master painters, they're really only using max maybe 5 values, So keeping it simple, I think, is a really important one.
Yeah, and in the interest of covering all the bases, I think I believe that what you're saying also applies in principle to also 3D rendering, like rendering your 3D art. Rather than trying to get 20 studio lights surrounding your your model or whatever, starting simple, looking for that graphical read. I think everything you just said, because you have studied your foundations, you studied your fundamentals when it comes to composition.
Yeah, I mean,
and stuff like that.
If this isn't reading, your silhouette and your graphic shape of the thing that you're doing, then you're already, there's no point in rendering it because you're still not going to read, because you want to be able to read it from this far away. What is it? And that just takes a lot of practice more than anything else. And that's where drawing for me really helped, is I constantly, while I'm sculpting, I'm looking at, the shape that I'm getting from, the silhouette of the things that I sculpt. The 2D, the front is nothing special, but the side, I'm starting to like the shapes that I see from the side, So it's really more about that stuff than it is about like putting pretty textures on anything.
Yes.
So,
well, and to your point that you made as well, I'm primarily a 2D artist, but since getting into 3D, especially ZBrush, it's really upped my drawing as well, like understanding form better. Who is it? There was a, and I think that even if you're like, well, I'm not planning on being a digital production artist, and I'm not planning on being a 3D person. You don't have to be a 3D person to try out ZBrush. Because I think even just exploring another medium like that definitely helps your primary medium.
I think, yeah, my understanding of forms, becomes a lot clearer. Just because you're in a program looking at something that's 3D, when I look at this from this angle, I can see where the overlap is from what kind of shape this brow makes. So when I draw this now, I can understand, what this shape is doing on the other side in order to make it feel volumetric, and seeing, if I push this up and out even more, now I'm getting a very different read. And understanding how these forms are moving and looking in 3D space, it's always going to help your drawing, and that's kind of a fun shape, so we'll just keep pushing it. So yeah, and I love the idea of being able to explore. I mean, I could take this right now and still continue to do something ridiculous, which is great. I love the fact that I have that ability, and I think being able to push your shapes, understanding all that stuff in 3D, it'll just help your 2D art as well.
Absolutely. And the cool thing about ZBrush now is like you could save out 3 different versions really quickly of like 3 completely different noses. And not have to lose one of them.
Just duplicate and hide the other one and start. I'm like, let's see what I can come up with. Maybe this one, and then when you go back and forth, you can kind of figure out which one you like more.
Yeah,
it's a very useful tool for sure to be able to push. That's a really classic thing that most people do. Is like right now I have kind of generic sculpt of what I drew. But now from here, what would be the most important thing for me to do is to take it and start really pushing some forms out and start really figuring out, how can I make this thing very, very unique in its own right and not feel like super generic, You can start pushing these things out more and trying to figure out, what kind of fun shapes can you come up with.
Totally.
And ZBrush and 3D stuff is super, super powerful for that,
We've got a few more questions in the chat here. One of them is from Natlopanda, and they're asking, how do you get started in character modeling? And before Ashley answers, I'll definitely say, like, definitely I think just listening to Ashley's story has a lot in it about the progress of, getting into character modeling. But Ashley, for someone who's interested in getting into the kind of stuff that you're doing, what would be some points of advice in terms of maybe what to focus on, or maybe some resources that they could look to?
Yeah, so for me, my biggest experience, so I mean, I was always drawn to like doing characters, and I think it's important to, anatomy, always super important. And it's not, you don't have to sit there and be like, this is the nasolabial fold that does this and that, but just really breaking down forms and fundamentals of forms and understanding what makes an interesting shape, I think is really important, because the design of a character obviously is more important than like getting it anatomically correct. Because it's a fantasy world, we can make whatever we want in here, And so for me, I think a strong foundation in understanding forms, it doesn't have to be exactly anatomy, but understanding forms of anything and really starting to observe, animals, characters, people, expressions, look at the artists that, there's a reason why you want to do character modeling. There's got to be somebody out there that you're really into, that you like, and look at their shapes and look at what they like and understand where they're getting their inspirations from. Because more often than not, it's usually reality that we're all kind of inspired by. Nature has some really crazy stuff out there, and it will never be better designers than nature itself. So that's always a really great thing to draw back on and to understand. That's usually what I draw back onto as far as character modeling. And for character modeling, again, you can do it in any program. I love doing it in ZBrush, but I think you can, even if you don't know the programs yet, again, character modeling, I mean, they call them model sheets, right? It's still in 2D though. So, looking at art, I think looking at artists like Sean Galloway, who's really good at simplifying the human figure and forms, is, I mean, that's super valuable, is understanding how to break that stuff down into simple shapes. Simple shapes will always read better than all these crazy complex, you don't have to sculpt every muscle in the human face in order to make it look like a face. So yeah, I think just continuing to study anatomy is like really, really important, and understanding design, it always goes back to fundamentals.
Oh yeah. Well, and I haven't talked to one artist that's ever said to me like, "Oh, I've mastered anatomy." Like everybody's constantly studying it, because especially human anatomy, because we are that thing, we make so many assumptions about it. And you've got to like really teach yourself to pay attention to what's really there.
Yeah, that's funny. I think I think of a really famous artist. I don't remember where it came from, but they said it might have been Ian McKeag, but he was like, if you can't draw a self-portrait of you without looking at reference, you don't know, like you need to still learn. And the point of that being, like, we look at ourselves almost every day in the mirror. And if you can't remember what you look like to draw, like, then you still need reference. So the point being is you should always use reference,
Yes.
is the most important thing is, yeah, it's fun. Like right now, I'm referencing my drawing, but I drew bats. Ian McKeag does the same thing, where he first draws, he'll draw like a fish, and he draws a dolphin or a whale or this, and then he comes up with this crazy mermaid, that you never would have thought to get, but you can see all the inspirations and all the drawings, the little warm-ups that he did in order to get to that point. So using reference is always super, super important.
Yes.
Because again, there's really cool shapes out there that, you don't have to come up with something in your head. It's already out there. Just take it. Just steal it. Just steal it from nature.
And everything you're saying is everything you're talking about is the reason why, it's a class experience, a cohort experience, learning from someone who does the thing that you want to learn, and having the time for that is a very different kind of experience than just pursuing YouTube tutorials. And YouTube tutorials are great. There's some amazing stuff out there, and I've learned a ton of stuff looking at YouTube. But
all the time.
Yeah, but the challenge sometimes is you don't see the 45 different aquatic animals that person drew before they started working on the final thing.
There's a lot of like hidden mystery movie magic kind of thing that happens with that stuff. And yeah, more likely than not, if there's something really cool out there, they probably found something very inspiring that made them
That's
want
right.
to, do it. So I think that stuff's super, super important to constantly be like exploring and looking. And
Absolutely.
the more you look, the more you'll be like, hey, I know where they got that. That's cool, And
Mhm.
we're all Pinterest freaks over here, so at least I am. Um,
Yeah.
so we're all trying to search for like that next cool idea, and I think reference is always really important to
Well,
get that.
and the cool thing about everything you're all the advice you're giving right now, this is 100% possible and achievable with your eyeballs and a piece of paper and something to draw with. Like, you don't need anything more than that to
No,
learn how to observe.
yeah, learning how to observe, it definitely takes practice, and then maybe one day we can all be like Kim Jong-ji, but one day in some other lifetime maybe. But yeah, just observing, and also I think it's important to observe what you like,
Yeah.
Because there's tons of artists on Instagram or in my art books where I'm like, oh, I love that. And then again, not just going as an artist, you have to go beyond just the I love it. You have to understand why, and that will help you understand design, and understanding like what makes something cool. What makes it cool to you? What makes it cool to other people? Why is Star Wars so popular? Why are Marvel characters so popular? And it's because
Yeah.
they're designed really well. They're designed to be loved. They're designed to have an attraction to. So yeah, it's really important to kind of try to break that down. And you're only going to do that if you study masters and if you look at artists that inspire you.
Mhm.
You can't live in a box and think that you're going to learn anything.
That's right. We got another really good question coming in on the chat from the same person. If you're torn between going to school for game art or for animation for the game industry, so it looks like for the game industry or animation towards the film industry, what do you suggest that I do? And before I hand it over to you, Ashley, I will say one of the great things about the way that Gnomon does things very differently than a lot of our art schools is that we actually teach you the entire pipeline. When you go through the program at Gnomon, you're going to learn how to do it all, and you're not going to be stuck at the end of the day going, well, I only studied this thing, so I don't know that. We train you in the entire production pipeline so that then you can choose what you want to focus on. So I think that's something that's really valuable about the way that we do things. So you don't have to feel like, if you're going to school at Gnomon, you don't have to make the perfect choice at the beginning to make sure that you've got just the right knowledge. But what would you say to that, Ashley?
Yeah, you make a really good point. Is a lot of it's very applicable to film and game. I worked 3 years at Legacy on film, doing strictly, basically modeling and sculpting. But at Gnomon, I took a bunch of game classes because I actually wanted to get into games. That was what I originally wanted to do. And so I took a bunch of game classes, and I actually swapped out a bunch of classes in my modeling texturing because at the time that was when the gaming what do you call it? The program just came out.
Okay.
We were one of like the first terms that could actually like potentially take it, and then I got scared and I didn't take it because nobody had gone through it. But now I kind of regret it because it's an amazing program. The gaming pipeline is awesome, and yeah, even I've had my hand in animation and doing animation. I actually love animating. And the only reason why I love animating is because, like, yeah, at Gnomon, I got to do it. You will get to kind of learn everything, and yeah, and then from there, your pipeline and what you want to do is always going to be changing. And that's good. I think it's great. I think you could even technically, you've got the time to pursue both. To me, honestly, so it's not really about a focus in that. I think being more diverse in your tool sets will never do you harm. I still love to sit. I do traditional 2D animating too sometimes. I've had one class in it, but I love to do it, and so I continue to do it. And maybe one day I'll do that. It's totally fine. I think we can always change like where we want to go and pursue, and I think that's healthy, as an artist. So, yeah.
Yeah. And let's see, Kahlua 900. I'd love I just got to give a shout out to everybody in the chat. Like, I love chat names. They're always fun to read. They want to know, Ashley, what advice do you have to create or schedule, to create a schedule or a routine to keep up with your art?
Ooh, that is actually a very good question, because I always struggle with that too. Once you get a job, I think once Gnomon exhausted me so much that once I got a job, I was like, I don't want to do any more personal work for a long time. Because you get home and you're just like, I don't have homework. I can just do whatever I want. This is great. But I think it's really important to have some sort of routine. So for me, I mean, do as I say, not as I do, because I tend to be bad about it too. But what I started doing this morning, in the morning, is I wake up, I usually work out, I have a cup of coffee, and I actually just sit on my iPad or, open up a sketchbook and just doodle for a bit, I think it's important. I start the day by usually trying to draw something, because it's what I enjoy doing. It's what I love to do. So if you enjoy animating, take 20 minutes of your day and just make something. It really doesn't take a lot of time. You just really have to make time. And I think that's the hardest part, is forcing yourself to make time. And I do it in the morning, because usually when I'm done working for the day, I don't want to sit at my computer anymore. So most of the time I'll escape that by, being kind of groggy and not really awake in the morning. And that's when I can kind of be my most loose self about my artwork. And so for me, the morning helps. I like having a morning routine of like sitting and sculpting or doing a drawing. For me, it's usually drawing on my iPad. I used to go to coffee shops all the time. It's killing me that I can't anymore during the pandemic. Yeah. I go to coffee shops and I just sketch all the time, going to museums and all that stuff. A lot of people just say, 30 minutes a day. So you can even set a timer. I think that's a really great thing to do, is give yourself a little timer. Put it on for, even just start with 5 minutes and just do some cool sketches, just sketch out some stuff or start pushing something, in ZBrush around. And when the time's up, great. You did it. You did something for the day, and I think even just starting at something like that could really, really help. If you're really struggling just doing anything at all. And then, upping the time to 5 minutes to then 20. Because what I notice is the hardest thing for me is to sit down and do it. But once I start doing it, I'll like skip the timer and I'll just be sitting here for like 4 more hours. So it's really just about sitting down and starting to do it.
So true. Yes. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think there's something to be said for mornings. I'm not at all a morning person by any stretch of the imagination. I'm the kind of person that when I have the energy, I'll stay up really late drawing. But when I started to learn to do what you're talking about, I will say what we tend to do is we put off the thing that we love. Mm-hmm. And it becomes that thing that we're trying to get to at the end of the day and that we hope we have enough energy for. Yep, but if you start the day with the thing that you love, you've already rewarded yourself.
You already did it. Yep.
Yeah. So now the rest of the day is just, it's just what you got to do, but it hasn't stopped you from doing
And I find that, when I sculpt, in the morning or draw something in the morning, then I have a plan for the next step. Like if I drew that bat thing, then the night of, I kind of already have a plan to go somewhere. I think it's really hard for me, at least after working and after doing a bunch of technical stuff, to sit down and go, okay, now I'm going to come up with something, and that's really hard for me. So I like in the morning when I have no brain function and no coffee yet or whatever it is, that makes you be able to think for the day and just kind of sit down and do something. It's a really like relaxing feeling just to let it go and like be an artist, and it sounds very artsy and cheesy, but it's true. Mm-hmm. Just allowing yourself to like make mistakes and just kind of start your day doing something fun for you.
Yeah. And I think there's something I love that you talk about like being kind of groggy and it's like your operating system hasn't fully booted yet.
Yeah.
But you're jumping into creativity.
Don't let it get into you, Yeah. You'll be most creative when you're like most relaxed, for sure.
Totally. Well, I find that like even my inner critic doesn't really come online until my OS is fully booted up. Like
mine neither.
when I'm groggy, I'm kind of like, I'm not like going, I can't do that. That's, that'll be stupid. I'm just sort of just doing it.
You're just like, just do it. Just get out there and just do it.
I love that.
you
That's
know?
great advice.
Yeah.
All right. So just a few more questions here. Let's see. How do you apply for internships at a studio, even if they don't have an opening? And also, what don't you have? Let's see, when you don't have any gadget like computers, will the studio be able to give chances to an artist based on like traditional sketches? That comes in from Dino Steven Mano.
All right, that's a good question. So I think it's really important to research the studio that you're looking to get into, because obviously somebody like Legacy, where they originally traditionally started at, Constantine Circus used to do like just sketches and drawings. They don't do that anymore. They're very much a 3D 3D modeling and stuff like that company. So for me, obviously, me doing just sketches isn't going to get me into that studio. But if you're looking to do character design for some sort of TV like Nickelodeon or anything like that, then yeah, obviously your 2D stuff is what's going to be important. And I think you need to, if you're really looking at specific studios, you need to gear your portfolio towards what they do. Somebody at Blizzard isn't going to look at your portfolio if you have everything that looks like Disney stuff. They're just not going to look at your work because they have a very specific style that you have to hit, and they need to be aware of your ability to hit it. You could be a great sculptor, but if you just can't hit what they're looking for in their designs and in their models, then they're not going to look at you to hire. So do your research. I think that's where the CTN expos come in handy. There's usually people that are doing reviews, portfolio reviews. Don't be afraid to show your work. Don't be afraid to get feedback. Because somebody like Blizzard is very specific in their work. So if you reach out to, a Blizzard modeler or a designer and say, hey, I really love your work. I want to know, can I bug you for half a second about, can you look at this piece of mine and give me some feedback? And what's important is follow up. I've talked to so many people who, they're like, hey, can you look at my stuff? And then they give them feedback and then they never hear from them again. To give feedback, receive the feedback, and actually execute it and then show it again. Say, hey, I listened to you. I took those notes. What do you think? That goes a long way because that shows that you're ready for pipeline.
That's right.
I have never done anything at Legacy that I sculpted it and then they were like, great, you're done. That never happens. It doesn't matter where you are. It never happens. There's always going to be somebody going, okay, that's cool. Can we try, we need to hit this note more, or we need to work on this, or this doesn't feel right. Or, because most time, at Legacy, you're working for other clients. You're not working for you. You're working for other people's visions, so you really need to be, when you get feedback, it's not about, I'm a bad artist, it's just, you're not meeting the vision that they see. And it does not mean you're a bad artist. So I think for me, when it comes to, internships and portfolio reviews, all that stuff is super important. Just be susceptible to, feedback and be very active. You have to be active in this industry. I know we're all introverts. I know it's sometimes hard to reach out to people, but I promise you, if you stay active and stay productive in talking to people, you will get that internship. You will get that job. There's no question about it. Communication and networking is everything in this industry.
Absolutely. Let's see. Some more questions. This is an interesting question from Epic Rat. Does someone need to learn to do from concept to final render to get a job in the 3D industry? Like, do you need to learn how to do concept art all the way through to a finally rendered 3D model?
I don't think you personally need to know, but I think you need to have a maybe basic understanding. Because for me, I was at Legacy for a long time, and I don't know the practical effects side of it at all at first, because I came from Gnomon, which was a very just all digital stuff. And so I constantly went out to the shop and I asked people questions. I watched, what Rick Gallinson in Mechanical was doing, so I could further understand how my model could benefit his pipeline and how it, because it all correlates. You know, if you just stay in your box and you just model stuff, but you don't understand how to, you know, like that later down the road, somebody has to rig it, you know, and if you make that rigger's life an absolute nightmare because you don't understand their pipeline even just a little bit, that's going to hinder the pipeline. So I think it's super important to know you don't need to be a master. I think it's a kind of like a jack of all trades kind of thing. I tend to have an understanding in each aspect a little bit, but I'm not an animator by any stretch of the imagination. I'm also not a rigger in any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot of people that are a lot better at lighting than I am, you know, because I tend to be very strictly on the modeling and character side of things. But I'm not ignorant to it and I'm not oblivious to it. So I really try to make sure that I understand everybody's pipeline at least a little bit so I can do my job better. And I think that's what's important is whatever kind of skill that you want to do is, you know, understanding other people's pipelines will help you do your job better. And that's at the end of the day what's really important, you know.
Yeah, and you just made you basically said it all. You kind of did my job for me because that's exactly why Gnomon teaches the entire pipeline. That's everything you just said. Because if you know what the next person's got to do with what you've made, you can make it that much better for them, and you're going to be so much more valuable to the studio.
You're going to be such a valuable asset to the team. Yeah, just because I actually know a little bit of rigging. When we were working on the Venom movie for designs, my buddy Darnell, who was doing the concepts, he was posing it in ZBrush, and it was taking forever because posing in ZBrush sucks. So I told him I didn't have that much to do at the time. I was like, "Hey, give me your concept model. I'm gonna rig it." And he's like, "What? What are you gonna do?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna rig it real quick." So I made a low poly, real quick model. I rigged it, very simple. And then what we were able to do from there is, you know, we baked out a displacement map, and then from there I was able to give him 15 poses within, you know, 15 minutes because you can just because you can now move the whole body very easily because it's all skinned. And then from there, he was able to take that, bring it in ZBrush and light it because they were really looking for concepts that were very dynamic. And it's just really hard to pose it in ZBrush. But the fact that I had the rigging knowledge, I mean, at Legacy, it blew their minds. As I started like moving them around in Maya and like, you know, doing those poses and switching from like keyframe to keyframe, they were like, "What? This is a thing!" And so then from then on out, we started doing that. We did that with the Iron Man maquette for Sideshow. I rigged the Iron Man maquette really quickly, and we did a bunch of poses so that way we can understand. I did the same thing with the Alien Queen. Just very simple modeling, but it goes a long way because you can create variation very quickly if you just rig it instead of trying to, you know, pose in ZBrush the whole day. So that's a really great example of me knowing the pipeline and knowing a little bit of it was a huge asset, and it was a huge time saver. So yeah.
I love that. Such a ninja move. Oh, but just hand it over. I'm gonna rig it for you. Yeah. Total
Gnomon thing of like, "Oh, don't worry, you guys. I got this. I know how to do something that none of you guys know how to do." Which is it's a total Gnomon humble brag. It really is. The fact that I knew how to do just like this one little thing.
Totally. You know? Well, I mean, rigging is not. I mean, that's a big deal. Like, there's a lot of people that go like, "I don't know if I can rig," but or they just don't know what it is, and so they get a little scared of it. So, I mean, that's pretty cool to be able to.
Yeah, you just can't be afraid of it, you know.
That's right.
And there's lots of cool tools on there. You know, I use like an auto rigger now for my own characters because I like to pose, but I don't like posing in ZBrush. So I actually always make a habit to rig my characters.
Yes.
And so, you know, at least if I'm going that far down the pipeline, and yeah, it's super valuable. I love being able to, and I also do it because it is a more technical thing, and I kind of don't want to forget that tool, and I don't want to forget that skill. So making myself and forcing myself to like do it every now and then is kind of important to me.
Well, and I think even to the point, like anybody out there that's like, "Wait, what the heck is rigging?" Literally, rigging is you're building the skeleton inside the model, the 3D character, that then allows you to move it in a realistic way. It's what the animator is going to use to move it around. So you can see how that would be an insanely useful skill, even if you're not a rigger in the pipeline, if that's not your job, to be able to take a model and quickly pose it in a really effective way. And so, yeah, that's Ashley. That's how you were able to pull off that sweet ninja move in studio. I love that.
Ninja move.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it made me look so cool.
Because you were in that
'cause
moment, right? You were
just
being
because I knew
really
how to
cool.
do that. So yeah, it
Yeah.
it does go a long way to remember every little thing, And then what was funny about that is when we were doing that Iron Man maquette, just for the sake of it, I did a quick 2D animation of Iron Man in Maya just because I wanted to. But it's because I knew the tool set of like how to animate it in Maya, So I had him like crashing down and like shooting a beam out, And so it's also reminding yourself to like continue having fun as well.
Absolutely.
It goes like a really, really long way, just to continue to have fun with those tools and to be able to push, all that stuff.
Well, I've got time for about
favorite.
one more question before we move forward. So I'm going to grab a question from what looks like might be from an international viewer. The name is Fantasy Flan or Fantasy Flan. Excellent name, by the way. I love that. Question: is it possible to be a part of a company or studio if you are from a third world country, you're overseas, and you could only do work online?
I think COVID's kind of answered that question now. Where I think now with this whole work from home and everything, I think people who are in other places besides, LA or the US or whatever, they definitely have more opportunities to be a part of a studio because everything's so online right now. I will admit it's a little harder. I can't personally speak to it because, I am here. But my suggestion is reach out to some fellow people that you can find that are international, and get their opinion on it and figure out what they did, in order to be where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of my suggestion. Again, it's always about, going back and networking and talking to people who've done it. Somebody's done it before you,
Yes.
So you can always usually figure out. And, Gnomon does have a great international program. Most of the people in my term were all international students. The struggle's real. I feel my heart goes out to everybody who's an international student because, they definitely have it harder than the rest of us for sure. But it is possible. And you just got to be active in asking questions about, how people got there.
Yeah. And I'd also say one of the advantages that all the social distancing that's happening is providing is that all of Gnomon's individual classes are now online classes. That's not always the case. Typically, it's only been a portion of our classes are offered online, but because we moved everything online, and if you're living internationally, or if you have a residence in the state of California, you can take those individual classes online right now. So if you may not have the opportunity right now to move to California or to go to the full-time program at Gnomon, you can either start the full-time program online remotely, or you can even just go in and take an individual class remotely, and it's a great way to start to level up. But also, the other thing I'll say is, like, when you take a class at Gnomon, you're with an industry person who's teaching you. Like, they're a studio person working in doing some amazing projects. So being in class with an instructor at Gnomon you're literally networking just by doing that.
Yep.
And you're getting to know your students. The time has flown by quite quickly. This has been so much fun, Ashley.
That's been fun. I'm actually, I haven't had to do like a quote unquote speed sculpt or whatever you want to call it in like a while. So this is super fun. I had fun sculpting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And thank you so much for unpacking things the way that you have. I think, you've provided tremendously valuable information for people that don't know a lot about 3D, or for 2D artists who are kind of like, what is this 3D thing? And why is it important? And can I learn it? I'm 100% confident that you're also, you're inspiring and are going to be inspiring people, much in the same way that Terrell has inspired you, for sure. And just the fact that you're out there doing what you're doing. So thank you so much for giving the time.
Oh yeah, of course. And of course, if anybody has questions, my Instagram's Stegon Eggs. It's up here on the username. It's just my last name plus eggs. Sounds like steak and eggs, so it works out. But feel free to shoot and message a question if your question didn't get answered. Like I said, I'm alive, I'm around, so I'll be here, and you can always reach out to me. So
absolutely.
Gnomon students do.
And guys, take Ashley at her word. Like she told you earlier in the stream, like, reach out to artists. You literally just got permission to reach out to her. And you've already had a connection. You can say, "Hey, I watched that stream," and you said reach out to you.
And exactly.
Absolutely. So
Doesn't it can't hurt. It really
that's
can't.
right.
I don't bite much, I promise.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Ashley. This has been amazing. This is also going to be recorded, available on our Twitch channel, but also in our video library on YouTube. And I also know that probably, students in classrooms out there who are looking towards Gnomon, maybe even those high school students like you that are wanting to go to a place like Gnomon, they're going to have the opportunity to see this, and I think it's going to help them tremendously.
I sure hope so. That's always the hope. Yeah. Always the hope.
Okay, cool. Well, I hope we have a chance to have you back on the stream in the future, Ashley. And I look forward to our next chance to collaborate and talk. So I'm gonna, as we transition, I'm gonna get ready to share a few things with you guys about Gnomon. And this is basically, I'm now going to address how Gnomon taught Ashley to do what she does. I'm going to address how Gnomon is providing those kind of pathways for people. So if I just got to do a couple technical things on the back end really quick to get that ready before my screen is shared. Oh, and before Ashley goes, thank you again. Bye-bye, and be safe.
Thank you so much. Yeah, be safe. Stay healthy, you guys, and keep up. Now's the perfect time to just sit at home and learn some new tools. So yeah, get cracking on it. Get on it. And have fun. So awesome. I'll catch you guys on the flip side.
Sweet. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. So we're going to put my screen up right now. And I just want to go through a few slides and talk to you guys about what Gnomon is, about careers for artists in digital production, as well as how Gnomon is training artists in those careers. So Gnomon got started back in 1997. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the stream today, we're essentially an art school in Hollywood that is training artists for careers in visual effects, games, and animation. And we started back in 1997. Gnomon was founded by an industry artist by the name of Alex Alvarez. And he is a creature artist himself. And he started Gnomon as a place where industry artists could come and learn digital production techniques, how to create 3D assets and animation and visual effects for film. And at the time, it was in very high demand in the industry, but few artists knew how to use the tools. And so Gnomon really answered that need, and we quickly blew up into being a full-blown college. And in the over 20 years we've been a school, we have won quite a few amazing awards. These are many of them here. And just briefly, these are including things like ranking #1 worldwide in VFX and animation, ranking #1 in the US in VFX games and animation. We've competed and won many, many times in the rookies, which all the top schools in the world compete in. So all of that's just giving you an idea that we've been around for over 2 decades, and we're very good at what we do. And because of that, our graduates go on to work on some pretty incredible projects. So this is just a small sample of some of the projects that have come out recently that Gnomon alumni have worked on in the industry. And these are some of the studios you might be familiar with who are regularly hiring Gnomon graduates. In fact, last year, we had a 97% placement rate in the industry for our graduates. The year before that, in 2018, 100% of our graduates from our full-time programs found a job doing what they trained to do in the industry within 6 months of finishing the program. And most of our placement alumni, the alumni go out and place in a job. They're doing that usually very quickly. But we sort of keep ourselves to a very tight standard, which is we want our graduates to place within 6 months. And we have an amazing placement team at Gnomon that actually coaches our students, helps them prepare their demo reel, helps point them towards studios, brings studios to the school to look at student work, and helps set up those pathways that those students can pursue as they're finishing up our program. It's a very important part of our mission as a school. So here's a quick video of some of our alumni talking about their experience at Gnomon.
Someone recommended me checking out Gnomon. I didn't know actually anything about it. I first found the tutorials, and so I applied, I got in, and it was the best decision of my life. I'm Kirsten England, and I'm a technical visual effects artist at Naughty Dog. I originally was a part of their foreground department in 2015. I was still in school.
I'm originally from Ohio. I grew up in a pretty small town there called Milan. Yeah, we came out here and visited the school and got a tour. just walking through like the sculpture lab here and everything. And yeah, it was just amazing. I was like, wow, I really got to go here. My name is Tyler Bulliard. I'm currently a look development artist at Walt Disney Animation Studios. I started there in the talent development program as a trainee on Zootopia, actually. And then I've worked on every film since then.
It's funny to think that like 10 years ago, you know, I was working at Target and, you know, paying my way through Gnomon. And my name's Jay Machado. I'm a senior hard surface modeler at Industrial Light and Magic, and I've been there for about 5 years. Worked on a few things there, Transformers 4, Episode 7, Rogue One.
Everyone I graduated with within, you know, a month or two was working somewhere in the industry.
All right, so what did these guys learn while they were at Gnomon? As we mentioned earlier, in a term, it's called digital production. Now, this is going to include the following skill sets and disciplines. These are things like computer-based visual effects, character and creature design, digital sculpting, which is what Ashley was demoing for us today, sculpting digitally to create characters and creatures, character and creature animation, environment design, lighting and rendering, matte painting and compositing, game asset creation, game engines, production workflows, and world building. Now, all of these skills translate into the following careers. So every one of these titles that you're seeing come up on the screen, these are all unique career paths within the entertainment industry. These are very different kinds of jobs, and these are all different steps in the digital production pipeline, like Ashley was talking about earlier. So you've got things like character artist, which is what Ashley does, ranging all the way through to literally a position called technical artist. And that's where you're going to find, you know, some of your things like rigging and those things that she was talking about. But these are very diverse roles, which means that there's room in the industry for many different kinds of artists who have passion towards different kinds of things. So I'd like to highlight just a few of these roles really quickly, starting off with character artists. And again, you know, Ashley gave us a fantastic demonstration of what she does in ZBrush. And that is the tool of choice. That's an industry standard out there for what character artists are using. And it's perfect for creating characters, creatures, basically any kind of organic shape, because it allows you to use traditional sculpting techniques and a foundational understanding of drawing to create lifelike digital 3D models of these kinds of things. This is a great example of a role in the pipeline that is very, you know, kind of traditional visual art leaning. As Ashley said, these are artists who are often spending a lot of their time drawing the same characters and creatures that they're sculpting. Next up are effects artists. And I like to say that what effects artists do is, in a nutshell, is they kind of sit in front of their computer and blow stuff up all day. Like the kind of sequence you're seeing here from the film Gravity, which won an award for its VFX. Now, what these artists are doing is they're creating these tremendously stunning visual images. I mean, these are often the moment that people go, wow, in the film. And because the images have so many moving pieces, they're so complex, you cannot animate them traditionally by hand like you would, say, a character or a creature. You can go in and move each part individually. Instead, what these artists are doing is they're using specialized software that allows them to drive simulations of real-world physics. So, for example, we're seeing a simulation being run of what is a particular object of a certain mass and velocity orbiting the Earth. What happens when something strikes that and starts to explode and break up? They've got to simulate all of that. So when the audience sees it on screen, their brain registers and goes, yeah, that looks realistic. And so these artists are really, you know, they're very inquisitive people, and they're looking at the world around them and how things behave and what they do. And then they're finding a way to translate that onto the screen and to, you know, kind of create these special sort of simulations that make these things happen. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is an overly technical job, and it's very art related, and it's very much storytelling related. And as you can see, the results are pretty incredible. Next up are compositors. Now, the compositor is usually more towards the very end of the pipeline, and that's because what happens with them is they receive all of the models and animation and even footage shot by the director, and they weave it all together into a scene like this. So they are suspending our disbelief and creating something that we think is real. So like here, you see the tennis court in the background are a 3D model. The tennis players are actual actors in front of green screens, and the buildings and props in the foreground are 3D models with lighting on them. They are also textured and painted. Additional actors are inserted. Final lighting pass is done to bring it all together, and you wind up with a scene like this. And this is from the film Wolf of Wall Street, and this is what is known as an establishing shot for film. And all that means is it's a shot, usually a short shot, just a few seconds long, that the director uses to establish a location for the story. Anytime the action of the story changes a location, you usually see a very wide shot of a city or a location, people doing things, because we as the audience need to know, oh, we've changed to another place. So instead of the director having to go out and spend a tremendous amount of money to hire actors and scout out a location and even get insurance to film there, instead they can go to a VFX house and they can say, hey, these are some of the establishing shots we need, some of the locations we're doing. Some of them don't even exist in the real world, so can your studio create these? And so then what happens is all the people in the pipeline go to work and they start creating the individual models and they light them and render them and so forth. But then all of those assets that are made get brought to the compositor, and the compositor is the person that knows how to weave it all together into a beautiful scene that, honestly, guys, I've talked to VFX supervisors who see establishing shots nowadays, and they can't even tell you, I don't know if it was done digitally or if it's really real in camera. And that's because compositors are doing such an amazing job with their craft. And lastly, I want to talk about something called pre-visualization. Now, previs artists, what they do is they're actually making an entire moving storyboard of a film. A storyboard for film traditionally is two-dimensional images hand-drawn and arranged in sequence, kind of like a comic book, that show you the different beats of a scene and the action that's taking place. They'll even draw in arrows, like where the camera needs to move. But what a previs artist does is they're creating a living, moving version of that. So these are artists that are really interested in doing animation and working in 3D. But as you can see, for the movie here, World War Z, this actor doesn't look pixel perfect to be Brad Pitt, but that's not the point. They're using simplified models and animation to tell the big picture story. They're showing us what's happening. How is the vehicle moving? How is the camera panning? What's going to happen in this part of the film? And so these are artists that get to work very closely with the director and the cinematographer, and they get to tell the story to the rest of the team that's going to be working on the film. So everybody has a template that they're all working from to create this project. So it's a really important role. It's more at the very beginning of the pipeline, and it's a perfect position for someone who wants to do this kind of stuff, but is more of a big picture thinker. You want to tell the story. You don't want to work on just one part of it. You want to get the whole thing out there. So this could be a great option for you if that's what you're passionate about. So how is Gnomon training artists for these kinds of positions? Let's talk a little bit about the academic offerings that we've got. So here they are on the screen, just sort of your bird's eye perspective. And first up, of course, we talked about this earlier, Gnomon offers a 4-year, full-time, fully accredited college degree program. That's our Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. Additionally, we have something called a certificate program. And that's a little bit more advanced than the Bachelor of Fine Arts. And it's more like, a 2-year hyper-intense training for maybe artists who already have a degree to come in and use Gnomon as a finishing school to launch into the industry. These two top options require a portfolio submission. They require a student being admitted into the program on the basis of their portfolio, and I'll talk to you a little bit more later about how you could do that. And then the bottom row here, the foundation in art and design does not require a portfolio submission, because this is actually an opportunity for you to build your portfolio at Gnomon. Now, when we were talking to Ashley earlier, she had mentioned she went straight from high school into Gnomon, and she needed 2 years working with her admissions advisor, just kind of on her own, building up that portfolio and creating the kind of things that she needed in it. But since then, we've started up this foundation in art design, which is a perfect bridge for just that, for maybe a high school graduate who really wants to go to Gnomon, but maybe hasn't had the opportunity yet to take all of the foundational classes they might need. Maybe they don't have a complete body of work that they've been able to put together in order to submit a portfolio to Gnomon. So it's a chance for you to come to Gnomon and to learn from Gnomon instructors the skill sets that we're looking for in a portfolio to be admissible into our program. So these would be classes like figure drawing, anatomy for artists, perspective drawing, composition, color and light theory, and then additionally some really awesome design classes like character and creature design, vehicle and mech design. And all of these 2D classes are going to provide the foundation that you need upon which to build a 3D education. The foundation is a course that lasts for 1 year, but you don't have to necessarily be in it for the entire year. It's there for you to get in and just take the classes that you need. And you can do that under the advisement of one of our admissions advisors. Now, if you finish the foundation with a GPA of 3.2 or higher, you automatically get a $500 scholarship into the BFA, just above it. And about half the classes you take also transfer into the BFA program. And then lastly, I should mention, as I did before, well over 70 of our classes are offered individually, and they do not require a portfolio submission. You just simply need to have a high school transcript, and you can enroll in these classes and take them individually at Gnomon. And currently all of these are online. So taking just a little bit of a closer look at our Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, I want to mention, this is one of our main academic programs at Gnomon. It's fully accredited, it's full-time, and under normal conditions, it's going to be on campus. Currently, it's 100% online on a custom-built platform that we made for our online classes well before the pandemic hit, and we were able to pivot our whole program onto this experience. You can learn more about that from our admissions advisors or by visiting the first page on our website. Just scrolling down, we've got a great video that talks about what the online experience is like. Now, this program has an optional concentration in game art. And what that means is that you'll have an opportunity to learn all of those different steps in the digital production pipeline, but to learn them specifically for use within game engines. And that's because producing a game is a little bit different than producing a film with visual effects or, say, a feature animation film like at Pixar. And we want to make sure that you've got the training that you need to go into a game studio and know how to work with the kind of tools and requirements that they have for their pipeline. Now, the BFA covers all the aspects of what we call a 3D generalist skill set. And that's what I was mentioning earlier. We actually teach the entire digital production pipeline. You learn how to do it all. And then you get to build on top of that for electives in your last term at Gnomon in a specific area of your interest. So what that allows you to do is be able to pull a total ninja move like Ashley was talking about, which is, she's a character artist, but she saw that a colleague was struggling posing a character. She said, well, I also know how to rig, so I'll rig that character for you, because she knew how to do that. And that makes you that much more valuable and employable for a studio, and helps you benefit the entire team and maybe even stay on a project longer than for just the one role that you're working in. And so having that generalist foundation is what makes you a really great 3D artist in the area that you're specifically wanting to go after. And that last term is your time to pick out 4 electives that let you focus in on a particular discipline. And the great thing about doing that at the end means that you can make that focused decision being well informed about the whole process. So you can really pick the thing that you know that it is that you love. Now, the 4-year program at Gnomon can be completed in 3 years, and a lot of our students choose to do that. And the way that works is they just simply stay on for the summer term. They don't take summer breaks. And if they do that for all of the years at Gnomon, they're able to finish our program in just 3 years and launch out and start working in the industry that much faster. This program also has a rolling admission as well as our 2-year certificate, which just means you can apply not just in the fall, but also in the winter, the spring, and the summer. So it allows you to find the right time for you to be able to start into the program. And we have students graduating, out of those 4 terms of the year as well. So that's our Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. Next up is the 2-year certificate program, which I mentioned is more advanced. And simply what this is it's that entire digital production training within just 2 years, but without the other classes that would be associated to getting a college degree out of that experience. So typically, this is a slightly more advanced, slightly more intense program that is often used by artists who may have gone to another art school and received a degree there, but they want to come to Gnomon as a finishing school. Or it's been used by artists that they're not necessarily pursuing a degree. They just want to get in and kind of get that hyper intense Navy SEALs kind of 2-year training in digital production and then launch out from there. And you can talk to our advisors about which option would be best for you if you're not sure which one is the most applicable. Let's see. Next up is our foundation, which I already took some time to explain, but it's essentially made for portfolio development in Gnomon. And as I said, it's up to 1 year. You don't have to stay in it the whole time. And there's no sort of like application or portfolio requirement to start the foundation. And the other thing I should mention is sometimes our foundation in art and design, it gets utilized often by students that want to build their portfolio in order to apply to Gnomon, but it's also a great option for someone who wants a portfolio developing course to prepare to apply to a different art school, teaching a different kind of discipline, whether you're wanting to go to another school to learn illustration or something that is not what Gnomon teaches. This also could be a great option for you to prepare your portfolio. And lastly, just mentioning about our individual courses. These are individual classes that you can take kind of a la carte at Gnomon. They do not require a portfolio submission. Just simply requires, this is for adult students. And this is something you can even talk with admissions about to find out if you're going to kind of want to just take one class to learn a particular skill set. You can get advice from our advisors about which class is going to be best suited to you as a first step. This is also a great option for students that are going to first go to, say, a community college. And while they're in community college, they want an opportunity to get a taste of digital production to see if Gnomon is the type of experience that they would want to transfer into. So they'll take an evening class or weekend class to kind of test the waters. Or we'll have students do that essentially just to start preparing for their education at Gnomon in advance while they're in community college before they transfer in. All those options are available, and you can talk with advisors about that as well. Last thing I'll reiterate is that currently all of our individual classes are available online, and that's a great opportunity for you to take an individual class at Gnomon in the midst of quarantine from your own home at your workstation, and our advisors can tell you more about how that works if you talk to them. So speaking of our advisors, I do want to mention them because Gnomon is very different than most art schools out there. We do things very differently because we understand that our program is also very unique. And one of those things that we do different is the way that our admissions advisors work with prospective students. This is our admissions team here. As you can see, Xander, who's in the chat, that's his handsome face right there on the screen. So that's who you're talking with in the chat. But all four of these advisors are really, they're excellent artists themselves, and they're able to offer, as Ashley mentioned, like when she was getting ready to come to Gnomon, they will offer very productive and professional critique of your work. They'll be able to offer you feedback to help you prepare your portfolio. So these aren't the people that you talk to that you wait until you're going to apply to the program. These are actually the first people you should talk to, even if you have questions about Gnomon, if you're considering Gnomon. And what that'll do is it's not going to put you in a high pressure situation where someone's going to try to strong arm you into applying. Actually, what we want to do is get to know you and get to learn what your art is like and to find out what your goals are and to help you discern if Gnomon is going to be a good fit. And if you determine that for yourself, then we also want to help you prepare before you apply. So all of that's available. My colleague Xander is going to share a link in the chat that'll help you know how to get in touch with these guys. It's just a simple form that you can fill out online, but I can't stress it enough. They are here for you. They're 100% available to you to answer questions, to make sure that you get what you need with regards to Gnomon. So they're available to you for that. Lastly, I do want to mention our campus, that even though campus is currently closed due to social distancing, I want you to see what we are offering as a campus experience, because say if you started into the full-time program while we're in social distancing, which many people are doing because it presents a good opportunity to be able to do that without yet relocating to LA, maybe save some money on some housing, or just get it started into some of those first foundational classes before campus opens up again. But this is what you would be coming to as campus opens up. And it's really important to see because we're a pretty unique place. So as you saw in those clips, our campus is not a typical college campus. We're located in Hollywood, and we're actually on a production lot in Hollywood. And we've got our digital labs equipped with industry standard hardware and software that are open from the morning until midnight, 7 days a week to our students. That being said, while under social distancing, we've really striven to make our custom online platform provide a very similar experience, whether that's ranging from group critiques, peer-based learning together with the other classmates, demos from the instructor, as well as mentorship available outside of the classroom during the week to our students. And the other thing that we are currently working with is for LA-based students in our full-time programs, we're also working on making sure that they have the hardware and the software that they need to do the programs, even while they're doing that from home under social distancing. So definitely it's a great option to look into if you're interested in starting the program, or if you want to take some individual classes on our online platform. There are a lot of students currently doing that. We've been having some fantastic students jumping in during social distancing. It's actually given them some leverage to get started with their goals under the present circumstances. So again, that's something you can talk with admissions about as an option for you. Lastly, I just want to mention our events, which you're actually at a Gnomon event right now. When under normal circumstances, we have events we host on our soundstage at our lot in Hollywood. But under the present circumstances, we are getting to stream a lot of these events, including this one. And these are just some examples of the type of events that we're live streaming. And every event that we do, of course, remains viewable later, recorded on our Twitch channel. But also we curate playlists on our YouTube channel of all the different kinds of events that we're doing related to category, whether that's animation or VFX or modeling or character art, as you've seen today. So I definitely encourage you to take advantage of those resources because they're just 100% free, and it's an opportunity for you to learn more about the industry, more about digital production, and hopefully to be inspired and see something that you might want to do yourself. And with that, guys, I just want to mention that if you're interested in an open house experience, we actually ran our first open house online in September, and that is also available for viewing on our Twitch channel, pre-recorded, as well as YouTube. And if you want to kind of get a more robust open house experience, looking into Gnomon as a potential college for yourself, hear from our admissions advisors, hear from financial aid, get a great panel with some artists that are all Gnomon alumni working in the industry. It's a great thing to view, and I definitely encourage you to do that. And lastly, I just simply want to say thank you so much for giving the time to tune in today. I hope that you were inspired. I hope that after this, you have the desire to go and create yourself. And we'd love to hear from you if Gnomon is able to help you achieve your goals and what you want to do. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us, guys. So thank you very much. I want to also give a big shout out to Miranda Harrington, who has been producing our event and is kind of my partner in crime on these streams. And she's there working. You don't get to see her face, but she's making sure things are running smoothly for us. I also want to give a huge shout out to Ashley Stegon once again. Please follow her on social media. She's an excellent artist, a very inspiring person. Feel free to reach out to her, as she mentioned. And my name's Adam Hartel. Stay safe, stay creative, guys, and we hope to see you back here soon on the Gnomon stream.